guest today is Patrick Combs. He is a Hall of Fame inspirational speaker, a best-selling author, a highly acclaimed comedic entertainer, a partner in Bliss Champions, and most recently a co-author of a report called Unlocking Your Purpose. Unlocking Your Purpose can be found on purposecode.com. You can download it for free, and it's an amazing report that will help you to get your mind to start thinking about what your purpose is in life, what you're here to do, and what makes your soul sing. I was really excited about having this interview with Patrick, and you'll see it in my eyes and my expressions when you watch the YouTube video down the road. This was by far one of my most exciting interviews that I have done because Patrick is a person who has found his bliss and lives joyfully every day. It was an interview that I just simply couldn't wait to have. Thank you so much for listening. Now sit back and enjoy this interview with Patrick Combs. Alrighty. Hey Patrick, welcome to the podcast. So glad to have you here, man. I've been waiting for this, as you know, for quite a long time. Few months now, I think. So I'm really excited
thanks,
to do
Joe.
this. Yeah.
As I have been too. I'm excited to be here with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and I do appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. So what I like to do is, I was very intrigued by us meeting, even though it was all via the web, but I had this opportunity to see you talk to the group that I was in and learn a little bit more about you. But what's amazing, and you already know this about yourself, is your storytelling and all of that. But before we get into all that, I want to kind of give the audience the backstory of who you are and your progression, where you came from. And then we're going to talk about all the cool things that are happening today, because I know you have, like me, a lot of irons in the fire, but you have some really unique things you're working on, things that actually resonate deeply with me. And that's the connection I have with you. And so I'd like for you to explain where you came from, who you are, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of everything.
Okay. That's nice, Joe. Well, I was raised by a single mother in Bend, Oregon, which a lot of people are familiar with these days, because I guess Bend's super big and super nice. But when I was in Bend, it was super nice, but not super big. It was 16,000 people. And my mother, a licensed practical nurse, raised my brother and I on a very small salary. In high school, we were living in a trailer house, which was no problem. But let me just sort of sketch. And nobody from our family had ever gone to college. But my mom was a pioneer. She was the one from our family tree that was reaching for more. And her primary way of doing that was to encourage my brother and I with phrases like, do what you love, learn to work with your mind, don't worry about your mistakes, look it up for yourself in the encyclopedias. That's what I bought those damn things for. And so I was the first person from my family to go to college. And in college, it's first at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, and then at San Francisco State. I just began to really realize that my purpose had something to do with uplifting and performing. And today I'm 54 and I know my purpose very clearly. It is through performance and story to uplift. But in your 20s, you're trying to figure out what to do with your life. I felt all the calls, all the tugs in the direction of my purpose. And I could not be more grateful that just by God's grace, I don't feel very responsible. The older I get, the less responsible I feel for my choices. I just feel grateful for them.
Awesome.
But the greatest choice I ever made in I think the first greatest choice I ever made in my life was that I was going to be an inspirational speaker, come hell or high water, is starting at 26 years old, and an author. And so without any connections, without, quote, the appropriate background or credentials or accomplishments, I did that. I became a paid professional inspirational speaker, and it's 25 years later, and I've spoken all over the place. There's been a million people that have been in front of me in my audiences, listening to me wax on. And then along the way, I expand. I took that purpose and I expanded into other joyful callings. The second sort of biggest imprint that I'm known for, I think, is that I created a comedic solo comedy show and I performed it all around the world in theaters. So if you look in broad strokes at me, if you go, oh, Patrick Combs, who is this guy? And you read my bio and stuff, you read Hall of Fame inspirational speaker, you read comedic performer with this smash hit show, and an author, a five or six time author. So that's what I look like on paper.
Right.
And behind the scenes, I just live doing what I love. That's been the great aim of my life, to live doing what I love, to place my joy even above above money, because somehow I knew early on that if I placed money above joy, I would not end up joyful and probably not even end up wealthy. So today I have a third company, and it's called Bliss Champions. And my business partner and I help people really lock into that great truth, unlock their purpose, and maximize their joy.
So I have so many questions. I want to go back to the early part of this, which is you were lucky enough to have a mother that instilled what she did in you with that positive reinforcement. I think when I listen to other people talk who had struggles creating the life that they would ultimately wanted, it seems that we trace a lot of that back to how you were brought up and what was said to you by your parents. That's it seems to be the ultimate catalyst of what you end up becoming. And the people that had incredible reinforcement and go ahead, make mistakes, whatever, follow your dream, follow what you love, all of that stuff, they end up becoming these incredible people. And the ones that didn't have that struggle through ridding that from their brains and flushing all of that garbage out, and then having to kind of rebuild themselves at a somewhere in the middle at an older age. And then eventually the hope is that leads them. So
yes and no.
Okay.
Right. So for me, 100% yes. My mother gave me the foundation, the schemata and the foundation, both the sort of the loving positive reinforcement of positive self-esteem, combined with really great directives. I mean, she was my first Joseph Campbell, right? He said, follow your bliss. And she said, do what you love. But when you counter correctly and want to add something to it, when you say, well, and then what if you got negative messages from your parents? Well, that's Howard Stern, and that's Bono, and that's Oprah. So what I know is the difference between though is that, because I'm really fascinated with how this conversation Howard Stern and Bono had once, both sharing that. So it seems like if you got no love, speaking for men specifically, you got no love from if you're trying to somehow live up to a father that beat you down, seems like tremendous success is often created, but then you have to reckon with why you created it. what foundation it was created upon, emotional, psychological foundation it was created on. At some point, I think there's a reckoning for all of us in our childhood, to say, hey, no one gets out of their childhood unscathed by the inadvertent or accidental mistakes of their parenting or perceived mistakes. No one gets out of that. I came out of my childhood heavily damaged by my mother's suicidal nature. So I just wanted to sort of add that footnote, Joe.
Yeah, no, I look at this sometimes through my own lens, that my mother struggled, her family struggled financially. Her father was an alcoholic, left them. Her mother had to take care of them all. And so when she was raising us, it was always a very cautious sort of raising. It's like, do something that makes a living. You get health insurance, like a very sort of secure, protective sort of thing. And I think that in my own brain caused me to not necessarily do all that I thought I could do, because I just always felt this limitation of, no, you shouldn't do that. And I was pursuing a music career. It's like, music, that's a very, very hard career path, like acting and other things like that, right? And so so when I think about this and we have this conversation, my father was very much would push me to say, go do that, but it would be more quiet. Like, my mother took care of us, right? He was working, so she got the say, and it was like, you just can't go do something like that. You have to take the safer route.
No,
right?
that's impactful, right? That's your first introduction to the rule book for how to proceed in your life. And you were given the one that said, proceed with caution.
Correct.
And boy, I was given the opposite rule book.
Yeah.
I really was. I was given a very different rule book, and that matters, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
It matters until it doesn't matter. As Eckhart Tolle says about suffering, suffering matters and is helpful until it doesn't matter and it's no longer helpful. Right? So as soon as we wake up to, oh shit, that's the rule book I had, now we're free to grab a different one off the shelf.
Yep. And it's just whatever that triggers that, and whether that's reading different things and being around people that, like yourself, that create this aura of like, no, there's another way. This is one life. Go do it. Right. No one's around anymore to tell you what to do, especially people that are older, right? It's just go.
And there's no safety in playing it safe.
Right.
Would be the title of my rule book. No safety in playing it safe. That's the greatest risk of all.
That could be the next title of your next book.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get to all that other stuff. So then the next thing that you talked about was the speaking part of it. And I know there's so many people out there, and there'll definitely be people in my audience that listen to this and then eventually watch the YouTube version of this that look there, they would love to do that sort of thing. And it's hard to get someone that has had such great success at it like you, to where I have you one-on-one at this moment, say, well, how did you do that? What was the first step? And then what was the part that finally went to something much bigger? And then where you are now, where the audiences are huge, your speaking fees, they could be, I don't know what they're big.
They're big.
Right. So
they're joyfully big.
Good. So what was the first, how did you get into it?
So I'm going to go fast and I'm going to speak to two different directions because I heard you very specifically. First, I'm going to go fast on how I got into it. But second, I'm going to couple that, if you don't mind, with what I would do today if I was starting.
Perfect.
Because they're different worlds. But what they both have in common is the psychology that's necessary. Okay. So let me address the psychology last. Okay. What I did is at 26 years old, I naively and powerfully and potently said, I want to be a speaker. So I want to be paid at it. So how do I get a paid speaking engagement? And it didn't take much looking to say, I have to tell people I'm a paid speaker. So I bought a mailing list of every college in the United States, half of all colleges in the United States of America, those that were part of an association. looking for all kinds of talent. And then I made an ugly ass flyer, and I licked and stamped 1,250 envelopes, and I put them all in the mailbox. And then I waited for the incoming, interested prospects, and I cold called and failed 40 incoming prospective cold calls. I failed 40 out of 40 of them. And then the universe's magic that is always present, will always show up, kicked in, and another lead came in, and I followed it up. And after 4 months of failed calls, I got a yes. Blackhawk Technical College in Wausau, Wisconsin, for $1,200 total, airfare included.
Wow.
And I was off and running.
Yeah.
So you can hear the challenge of it and the mechanics of how simple I somehow intuited the path to be. And I see people overcomplicate marketing all the time, especially in today's world where marketing is super sophisticated, and it looks like you have a billion followers and all this stuff, and none of it's rarely ever true. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, but I was launching myself as a speaker in 1992, when if you wanted to have a voice in the world and you wanted to be paid for it, there was, keynote speaking was it. I was looking up to the Tom Peters of the world, mm-hmm. who were being paid $50,000, and they were like, oh, wow, Jesus, Tom Peters has a job where he gets up in front of people. They pay him to give his opinion and his advice. Jesus, I wanted that so bad. I wanted that so freaking bad. So I went after it very directly. Who would pay me to speak to them and give them advice? Who could I command their attention of and be 100% confident I can tell you something that's beneficial? Mm-hmm. And it was college students. I said, oh, I know what to say to college students, because I was there just 3 years ago, and they're not getting the truth about what it takes to grab that job you're passionate about and go for it. So, and therein lies the deep psychology of what it takes. It's answering a tug on your sleeve from your soul that says, you have something you want this, and you've got something to say. But the hardest choice, the first 3 steps are the hardest. One is to recognize you got a tug on your sleeve. Your soul is saying, that would be incredible, and something is there for us. I believe in that more than I believe in anything in the world. Something and Stephen Jobs said it, something inside you intuitively knows what you already want to be. Yeah. Something inside me intuitively knew I wanted to be on stages, inspiring people, uplifting people. To answer that call is difficult. It's hard as hell. Only the most courageous, only those who find their moment of courage will do it. Because there's no such thing as being courageous. There's just being courageous in the right moments. Mm-hmm. So once you answer that, then the second giant hurdle you got to get over, even in today's world, is what's my message? Because the number one thing that powers a speaking career is confidence that you deserve to be on that stage. And it's hard as hell to find if you don't know where to look. And so that confidence has to be built on, who can I confidently be certain I could make a difference with because of what I know and I've experienced and I've overcome. See, at 26 years old, I could not have built a successful speaking career speaking to corporate audiences. Why? I had fantasies about it because Tom Peters was the guy I was looking up to, but I could not find a firm ground to stand on and say, I can walk into a corporate audience and tell them what's up. At 26, no, I haven't worked at a corporation. So the second deepest question that you answer for yourself is who? Come on, just tell me. Who in front of you? Who do I put in front of you that you go, oh yeah, I can do this? And when you nail that, boy, you're like nuclear powered. Now all you got to do is say, great, how do I tell them I'm available for hire? How do I tell the right people I'm available for hire? But so in today's world, though, so here's the nuance in today's world, though, Joe. I wouldn't start a keynote speaking career in today's world if I was saying I want to be a speaker, because now social media exists. See, because I'm a messenger, and and that just means you got messages you want to share. So the messenger in me saw, oh, well, in 1992, that was stages if you were the keynote speaker. In 2021, it's every day on social media.
Right.
And that's where, so anybody that, quote, wanted to be a speaker said, no, you don't want to be a speaker. You want to be a messenger, constantly sharing your messages and often getting invited to stages. And stages now look like Zooms, they look like webinars, they look like 20-minute TEDx talks. They look like anywhere where you are the authority getting to share your message.
So let me ask you this. I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to know why, when you first did that speaking, when you started on this path, what made you think only 3 years out of college that you had something to then go back and teach the college kids? What light bulb went off and said, I can go back and explain to them that I'm doing what I love?
None of my peers, I looked around and none of my peers, all of them that were smarter than me, all of them that had better grades than me, even my peers that went to better schools than me, UC Berkeley and Stanford, they all seemed to lack a fundamental understanding that I was benefiting from, which is you should do what you love. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you're lucky.
Yeah, they all seem to have bought into the giant myth or lie or distortion that says you should do what's hot. You should do what you can get. You should do what pays you good money. All of which to me look like I'm going to cuss now, astonishing bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, I think one of the greatest blessings God ever gave me was a radar that said, that's inferior bullshit. That's not what a great, meaningful life of purpose is built on. It's not built on what's hot, on what makes money, on what other people will think is cool. It's built on what your soul thirsts to do.
Yeah, it's powerful. Just had this conversation with our friend Chris Hay, where I feel like there's I don't know how to even say this, but it feels like we're fixing ourselves later in life. And I wish what you did on that first stage for those college kids, we could even go a little earlier in life and talk to kids that are, I don't know what the mentality is and what the age group and what they can absorb at a certain age. I don't know that scientific research that's been done, but it would be nice. You know how sometimes a young kid will see something, they'll see a Michael Jordan.
Joe. It's
Yeah.
happening.
I just wish we could move it. I feel like we're all trying to fix it now in midlife, where I wish we could move it earlier.
But the role models for today's kids that are young, that are below 10, they're tremendous.
Yeah.
I have a 12-year-old son, and if you've never seen Mr. Beast, and my son loves Mr. Beast,
I have.
and I love Mr. Beast, that's a messenger. That's an inspirational messenger who is role modeling. Hey, you can not only do what's wildly joyful and fun, but you can that guy understands giving at a level that I dream of learning, that I dream of embodying. So, I view this next generation as savvier, as more enlightened. And it's so awesome to see.
Yeah.
But Mr. Beast is role modeling for my son. I think, I'm a role model for my son, that you can do what you love and have an abundant life. And Mr. Beast is a better role model. Mr. Beast gets it earlier and at a level that's almost incomprehensible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So you've talked about the speaking part of it. And then how about a little bit about the one man show? Because that was a really interesting story to me
Ask
about
me a
how that came
question.
about.
Would you benefit me with a question?
Well, I want to know like I remember the story, how you saw it on TV and it triggered and you were like, I want to do that. Like when you said, I want to create this show, and it just that one night in that hotel room that triggered it all for you. I just like that's you're still on stage, but it's a step in a completely different direction.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Joe. Okay, so and let me think about making this super relevant for anybody listening. Okay, so what's really remarkable to me is that we can be successful. So maybe someone's listening and say, I love my life. I like my life.
Mhm.
I'm successful. And you're just clapping along and you're just saying, oh yeah, I got this. I couldn't be happier for you. But I want to tell you a true story from my life about when I felt that way, but I wasn't, but I wasn't but there was something much bigger that was tugging at my sleeve that was very hard to acknowledge. So I was this quote, by my standards, a very successful speaker. And then, but there was this secret unrealized ambition, Joe. And you haven't heard this story, I think. And the secret unrealized ambition was to be a storyteller in a theater, just the only guy on stage enthralling and entertaining an audience and making them laugh with just a personal story from my life. This was a dream that came to me that was inspired. It's not a dream. This was a soul calling that I felt when I was about 22 or 23 years old, because even before I became a speaker, my girlfriend took me to a theater, not a movie theater, and we watched Spalding Gray, a legendary theater performer, just tell us a story for an hour and a half from behind his desk. And I walked out of that theater, Joe, and I turned to my girlfriend in her old 1964 Rambler. And I said, thank you for bringing to me that. That was amazing. And she said, oh yeah, Spald's so great, isn't he? I looked her in the eyes. I said, no, that was unbelievable.
Right.
I said, what I would give to do that. Because I thought I'd just seen the best thing a human being could ever do with their life.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman who loved me very much and meant nothing harmful by it responded, yeah, but you'd have to be funny. Because Spald was super funny.
Mm-hmm.
And what she didn't know is that was like shooting an arrow accidentally right through the chink in my armor. Because I heard it and said, oh yeah, what was I thinking? I just sat in there with a master, and I'm not funny, and I'm not even a good storyteller. So I'm just sitting here in this 1964 Rambler having myself a pipe dream. I can't do that. What he just did, he made it look effortless because he's a master. And so I built a speaking career, which I very, very, very much love, but I still had this secret unrealized ambition. And at 30, what you were referring to is at 33 years old, another theater performer had come on the scene, named John Leguizamo. And John Leguizamo was, in my book, was Spalding Gray times 10. And no disrespect to Spalding Gray, the creator of the medium. But where Spalding Gray sat behind a desk, John Leguizamo used the entire stage, became 18 different characters, male, female, young or old, and was 10 times funnier in my book. So he came on I was there in a hotel room, and his HBO special came on, and I've never felt worse in some way about my sort of career self well, viscerally, I got this horrible ache, pain in my solar plex. And it was a pain of fear, of paralysis, of envy, of self-loathing, because it was this swirling ball of hell in my stomach that said, I love what this man's doing and I want it so bad for myself, but it's impossible for me to get to because it's I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to ever do what I dream of doing. And that was my fear of not doing it, built up for 10 years. Is, as we like to say in my business, Bliss Champions, your purpose left unattended to becomes a purpose curse, becomes a curse. And so on that hotel room bed, I felt the curse and the pain. And fortunately, I grabbed for a pad of paper and I wrote at the top, "What are you so afraid of?" And I started free writing. And I wrote all these fears. You'd expect them: looking bad, looking stupid, being awful, wasting my time, wasting money, taking away from my really good speaking career. And then in the end, I wrote something that really surprised me. "I'm afraid I won't be as great as John Leguizamo or Spalding Gray." And when I wrote that sentence, it like took the lid off of something super dark and evil in me. Because when I saw that sentence in the light of day, I never realized that was one of my fears. It looked absurd. I laughed out loud at the absurdity of, I've never even attempted what they've done. And yet the reason why I'm not going for it is because I'm comparing myself to the greatest human beings on planet Earth at this craft. And it just struck me as ridiculous. And then a voice came into my mind, a thought that I'd never had before. Couldn't you just do it for fun? And the weight of the world was lifted off that secret, unrealized ambition. Me, who's so success-minded, had never thought of just doing it for the sake of fun. The pleasure of, I should try that. Who cares if I fail? And that was my ginormous breakthrough on my greatest bliss ever. And so I started doing it for fun shortly after that. And to make a long story short, for 15 years, I toured with my one-person solo show. And this is a metric I care about, but is not why I did the show. I did the show for the love of doing the show, for the love of learning to do the show, for the love of hearing audiences laugh. But in the end, what blows my mind is 100,000 people bought tickets to see my show. 100,000 people sat in my audience. For 15 years, I had a red carpet tour of the theater world. And today it's being made into a Hollywood movie.
It's amazing.
Right?
Yeah, it's incredible.
So
what you said, why not just do it for fun? If someone's in the same spot that you are in at that hotel room when you were watching him perform on that HBO special, would you say that that's a good starting point for some people who just can't seem to do that thing that they so want to do? Is that a good trigger? I don't know if that's the right thing.
It is.
Okay.
In Bliss Champions, we've learned, we've got a real extraordinary map for these kind of, we call them bliss journeys. Going into speaking was a bliss journey for me, a journey to follow my bliss. Going into theater was a journey to follow my bliss. Writing a book was a journey to follow my bliss. So we've got a really detailed map. And what's surprising is the biggest pitfall we know of on the map is the desire to monetize what's blissful to you too soon, too early. So you think of your bliss, right? And then immediately society has trained us to think, but how will you make money at that?
Mm-hmm.
And that kills more bliss journeys. The two biggest killers of all bliss journeys is not getting started and trying to monetize too soon, even think about monetizing too soon. So the antidote to monetizing too soon is forget about monetizing. Do it for fun. Do it for fun. The benefit is joy.
Mm-hmm.
The benefit is fun. The benefit is aliveness. Then the benefit is ball in motion, and momentum has to be included in anybody's realistic formula of great success. Momentum is one of the major ingredients of great success. So as long as you're sitting around not doing something, trying to figure out how you can guarantee success on it, you got no momentum. You got nothing.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, just do it for fun.
I love it.
That's my mantra now, Joe,
I love it.
I don't wake up in my career and figure out how to do things for money. I wake up and I figure out how to do things for joy. And the money, I mean, I care about money. I make good money, but the money is a secondary thought. And as long as money has that rightful positioning in my life, it's secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Like once I've figured out what's joyful to me and I've got emotion in it, we can figure out how to monetize it. No problem. If you know what we teach in Bliss Champions, if you can't monetize your most blissful activity, don't blame it on your bliss. Blame it on your business skills. And you don't have to blame it on your business skills. You just have to know it's not my bliss that I can't monetize. I don't have to change my bliss or forego my bliss. I have to learn to monetize.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. It's amazing how many people have such great talents, great ideas, great aspirations, and it's just that putting that one foot in front of the next one. And the one thing I think you hit it right on the head is just I can't make a living at that. How can I do that? And it would be so cool if people just did it for the fun of it. And then the joy and what they bring to other people, all of that other stuff, the universe delivers because it just realizes that's what you were meant to do. Right. It's just,
yeah.
Well, so you mentioned Bliss Champions, throughout this conversation. And I think this is the appropriate time now to sort of clue in, because again, we're limited on time and I have a million things. So let's talk about Bliss Champions. So I would like to know, I ran across it just because once we got off that call where you were teaching us how to tell the story, tell our story in a very creative way. I then was doing all my own research and I said, who is this guy, man? I love the way he talks. And I can tell that there's just something about him and his soul that's on fire. And I want to know more about it. And then it took me to Bliss Champions. So I'd like for you to explain to the audience what Bliss Champions is, what it does, how, and then we'll put in the show links, all of the other stuff to get in touch with you. But to explain what its purpose is would be awesome.
Okay, well, I'll give you a scoop, Joe, too. I don't know when you're going to publish this. In about 1 week, 2 weeks tops, we're going to announce our brand new book.
Okay.
And I'm so excited about it. It is the conversation we're having.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell you, the first person I'm going to tell. It's called Purpose Code: How to Unlock Your Purpose. Maximize your joy, astound yourself. And if someone says, oh, geez, I'm interested in this free report we made about it, which is the 10 reasons why people don't unlock their purpose, go to purposecode.com. Okay, so no one knows that website exists yet.
Okay.
But they're going to find out first through you, Joe. Okay, cool. Purposecode.com.
I love it.
So Bliss Champions. Bliss Champions. So the surprising thing, Joe, is you tell me how much you've seen this. I can't believe how much I've seen. It's shocking to me. Is how many successful business owners there are who are lacking joy. These are people, I'm telling you, like mega millions, dream home, not one dream car in the driveway, as many as they desire, looked up to by all their peers and all their employees, happy that they built the business, happy they overcame all this stuff and made it to the top. but their deepest secret is something's missing. And so my business partner was one of those guys. He cashed out for 50 million bucks, and still something was missing. So his story is quite remarkable. He's not here, so we won't tell it. But as you, so he both knew it through personal experience and sitting in on groups like on EO. You know what EO is? Mm-hmm. EO is the Entrepreneurs Organization. You got to be a successful entrepreneur to qualify to get in. Well, one of the first things that my business partner saw up close and personal through that organization is, wow, so many people here have secret unrealized ambitions that they're not going for because somehow their successful business has them in a little bit of a bind. And somehow along the way, while they were flexing their entrepreneurial muscles, their muscles for joy and bliss atrophied or were never developed. And so we both inherently understood how much impact, if you can shift a person at the top of an organization to be joyful, they will spread that message through the entire organization. Leaders that lead from joy and that follow their bliss want everybody to follow their bliss and maximize their joy. That is you can't be living joyfully and blissfully, truly, without wanting to spread joy and bliss. It's impossible. It's impossible for love to not desire to spread love. So Bliss Champions is our remedy. We're 4 years into seeking out and accepting individuals who are successful, but know something is missing. They don't know how to figure out what is missing and what would be, in their lexicon, a smart move, right? Because they're used to everything being, quote, smart. Right? What would be a good, smart, legitimate move that would bring them more joy? And we're experts at that. We help them unlock their purpose, because once you know exactly what your purpose is and you can put it in words, you have a true north. Mm-hmm. And now you don't make missteps. But once you unlock your purpose, then the great opportunity is to figure out, great, you know what your purpose is. What bliss journey should you take up? And there's a lot of choices, so you have to have a good decision-making structure. So we call ourselves Bliss Sherpas because we've been up and down on our own bliss journeys through our whole lives. That's been the blessing of our lives. We know the territory, we know the mistakes, we know the pitfalls, we know where people quit and why they quit. So we Sherpa people up on blissful journeys. And all of our secrets to doing that, I've been a Sherpa for people following their passion and living their dreams and following their bliss for 25 years. And Eric has been doing it for an equal amount of time as a CEO of large organizations. So this is why I'm so thrilled that we wrote a book together on it. And the book's called Purpose Code, and all of our secrets are in that book.
That's great. Was there some momentous occasion that how you and Eric connected?
Yeah, Eric cashed out for millions of dollars, and and the day after he cashed out, and he went to lay in by his pool, just overlooking his wine estate. He was rushed to the hospital and almost died from poor health. While he was laying in that hospital bed contemplating his mortality, he realized, I didn't finish the job of my purpose. And he knew that Eric's always known, I've known Eric 25 years. Eric has always known his purpose is to help other people, is to inspire himself to live joyfully, mm-hmm. and to take that inspiration and spread it to other people. This is the thing about purpose. Here's a lesson in purpose. Your purpose is first and foremost what selfishly brings you joy. And you can't spot your purpose if you're looking outside of yourself for where to save the world. you won't see it. When you say, look, it's just selfish. Something inside me always, always finds joy when I'm in this direction, when I'm doing this kind of activity. I'm my best self. Once you identify where you're your best self, what you'll see is then that when you give yourself that gift, you automatically give it to others and desire to give it to others. And that's where your purpose becomes a service to the world. So Eric, figure it out, man. I've always been living my purpose, but I slipped off track while I was going on flexing his entrepreneurial muscles and going on this incredible monetary tear.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got out of the hospital, began working on his health, and called me up and said, let's start Bliss Champions. He said, there's, the one thing you and I have always been united on is wanting to help people follow their bliss.
No, that's really crazy.
And the reason why I said yes is because I had hidden from my bliss for 10 years in fear, right? My secret ambition seemed impossible. And so I knew the cost of doing that. I knew the falsehood of doing that. And I knew the tremendous treasures that await anybody on the other side of finally finding the wherewithal to do it. And so, as I said, once you've experienced that kind of joy and bliss and truth, you want to share it with others. You want to say, like, I'll show you where your greatest life is. And society just doesn't have enough messages. Society has too many messages about smart, about practical, about money, about status. And all that stuff comes with following your bliss. But it can't be the deciding factors, or you won't know where your bliss is calling you to.
Yeah, it's like we have it backwards. It's like the cart before the horse, right? And if we can just flip it, everything just sort of opens up. And through Bliss Champions, you help people to work through this, and then ultimately the goal would be, is it a week long?
It's a 6-month program.
6-month program. So
yes, 6-month program. People apply to get in. We work with 7 people at a time. Cohorts of super small 7, so it's super individual. And then it culminates after 6 months of coaching and masterminding. It culminates in our super specialty. We take you to Bliss Island, which is out in Hawaii, where we own a property, and we run an extraordinary 5-day retreat to really launch our participants into their bliss.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well,
it's
I
fun.
love it.
It's
you know
fun.
that I love it. One of these days I'm going to be a Bliss champion. I'll have to figure that out, but sooner than later.
Yeah, we've launched authors. We've launched, we've taken people that thought this isn't worth a book, and now they're published with one of the best publishers on earth, and they've got a multi-thing deal. One guy, he said his bliss was motorcycles, riding Harleys, and he thought, what can I do with that? That you can't monetize that, and now he has one of the only dealership licenses in the country to rent Harleys and take people on Harley bike tours. Mm-hmm. He has his own Harley bike tour dealership. We've taken CEOs who had giant companies but weren't happy, and now they're super joyful, super happy. Their marriages are better, and in addition to running their company, they're joyfully doing this thing they always dreamed of doing. They're their more amplified, expressed self. So our stories sound like that,
Yeah, that's great. So how can someone find out about Bliss Champions, and how do they go about doing what they need to become a part of that program?
Well, I'm going to answer that really quickly, and then let's go to different territory if you don't mind. Okay. Because I don't want someone listening to this. I'm looking at the clock here, and I think we have about 12 minutes, and I
think it's amazing. So I wanted to give it its time, because I think
everybody should start at purpose code, because the biggest value that they can get right away is truly to read this report that I wrote. And it's called The 10 Things That Stop People from Unlocking Their Purpose. You got to know, how come I don't know my purpose? What am I missing here? So go to purposecode.com and just grab that free report.
Perfect.
And then it'll lead you to learning about Bliss Champions. It's an application process. I would love people to apply. It's free to apply, and then we individually interview you, get to know you, and we have all kinds of ways to serve, and you
Perfect.
can get the book in your hands.
Okay, cool.
But let's see how much more insight or something super helpful we can pack into the last 10 minutes here.
Perfect. So I have something that I totally wanted to ask you, that if you can put it in an understandable layman's terms where it doesn't come across as being overly spiritual and foo-foo, but you talk about being present, right? And so many people these days are talking about that, but I love watching your talks when you're outdoors taking a walk and you have your phone and you talk about it. But how do you put it in like everyday
Layman's
terms
terms,
because everybody looks at it and go, wait a second, you want me to sit in silence for 10 minutes, meditate, or you want me to,
I don't, right.
all of those things to pull yourself back in, to be centered, hold space for yourself, all these things. And it's just so hard these days. We're getting bombarded from all sides. So because of you and how you can communicate these things, I want to know from you what being present means and how someone could practice it on a daily basis.
Okay.
Where it's not this.
You're making me super happy here, because now you're bringing up my next favorite subject.
Perfect.
Thanks, Joe.
Awesome.
So I am both deeply spiritual about this, but there's no need to talk about it in that way, because I didn't approach it that way. I just approached it from, man, I need a different way to do my life. And I found that different way to do my life. And it was the most revolutionary, impactful, beneficial thing I've ever learned or done in my life. And so you'll see me spend the majority of the rest of my life has boiled down to two things. On one hand, follow your bliss. And we've been talking about why. Why? Because it's your bliss. It will bring you bliss. Mm-hmm. And, as we say in Bliss Champions sometimes, is there something better than bliss? Because bliss means perfect happiness.
Yep.
So what are you looking for if you're not looking for perfect happiness? So, but in follow your bliss, there's a doingness to it, right? It's okay. We don't send, but there is another path to bliss. And so I have a right hand and a left hand strategy to life. In my right hand, because I love having a career. I love having something to do every day. I love making, having a career. I follow my bliss. And in my left hand, I know where bliss is without doing anything. I know how to find bliss every single day of my life, no matter what happens, no matter the circumstances, no matter the hardships, no matter the challenges. I know where bliss is, even in storms. So my career could not be going well, but in my left hand, I still know where joy is every single day and how to get there in a concrete fashion. So that, to me, this left-hand strategy I'm talking about that you brought up, that I call a presence practice, that's where it sits in my life. So let's see. It's a good window into this. I'm taking a little quiet space for it to find me. Why would someone want to practice presence? Because what I didn't know, I was well into my 40s, Joe, and I had never once wielded the word ego. And up until the point when I got a new definition and it became very meaningful to me, ego to me meant don't be egotistical. It meant, or you have a healthy ego. It takes a healthy ego. That's all I thought of ego. When I use and then to be honest with you, I hit a rock bottom in my life sometime in my 40s. My ego, my shadow self, my bad behavior, the worst of me put me in a position where I was at my rock bottom. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way. And I reached for, there had been a book sitting on my shelf for a long time that I had no interest in. It was called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Mm-hmm. And I grabbed this book and it re-educated me and it re-informed me and it completely transformed my life. The book didn't transform my life as much as my adherence to what the book said for the next 7 years on a daily basis transformed my life. It did it very quickly, but I was so in love with what I was discovering that I just kept being a diligent student of what Eckhart Tolle calls presence. Okay, so in a very short amount of time, here's what I would love somebody to experiment with on this call that is non-spiritual. Okay. The only thing that is ever causing you a bad feeling is your thoughts. Now, so I had to wrap my mind around that first, experiment with that, because I used to believe, no, I'm having a bad feeling because this shitty thing happened. And I was positive that was true until I wasn't, until I began to say, wait a minute, is there a buffer in me that's causing the pain, not the situation? This is easily answered, but everybody should try it on. That's life-changing, because what if situations and bad circumstances are not causing you bad feelings? What if it's what you think about those bad circumstances, how often you think about those bad circumstances that are causing you a bad feeling? Okay. For instance, I wanted to talk about the pandemic, and then I'll talk about the pandemic. For instance, the day that it's announced that we're going to be in quarantine for however long, an indeterminate amount in 2020, people in the world had multiple possibilities for a thought about it. Somebody sitting there home could have taken that news and began thinking all kinds of really bad thoughts that, hey, are well justified. I'm not here to argue with whether that thought is justified, but somebody could have been sitting there thinking, this is awful. I might lose my job. I like going outside. Now I can't going outside. What are the implications of not going outside? What if I'm in my house forever? What if I get COVID and I die? What if my friends get COVID and I die? What if they never live this? The governor is terrible. The president is terrible. The vaccine is terrible. Was it made in a lab? Those thoughts are causing bad negative emotions in the body. And what if, and some people thought those every hour of every day, not by choice, but by habituated pattern of their mind getting to think without ever being safety checked, without ever any other force saying, hold on. Do we want to think like this 24/7? Is it serving us? Okay. But equally and lots of people did that. So lots of people had horrible emotions. And I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying be aware that's why you had horrible emotions. What didn't happen is the pandemic is the announcement. The pandemic did not reach into anybody's body invisibly and say, you now feel bad. Outside circumstances cannot reach in your body and flip switches and say, you feel bad. They cannot be the cause. Only your thoughts can be the cause. Equally so, and wildly true, unbeknownst to me just 6 years ago, but now perfectly known to me, and the most exciting thing I've ever learned is some people heard the news of the pandemic and thought like this: oh, we're going to go into quarantine. Now it's time to wash the dishes. And didn't have further thoughts about it until there was more news, or until those thoughts were necessary, and didn't feel negative emotions. Or if they did feel the negative emotions, only felt them for as long as that emotion lasted, while it wasn't being sustained by unchecked, unreasonable, insane, incessant thinking. So a presence practice is simply, well, on one hand, a presence practice is the deep recognition that circumstances don't cause you upset. Your thoughts about them do. And your ego should be defined as when you're not thinking your thoughts, they're thinking you, and you don't even know it. So I learned to not be the crazy guy, the insane guy who's washing dishes, who's physically washing dishes, but who mentally, in my mind, for 15, 20, 30 minutes is having an imaginary argument that I'm winning with somebody else. I learned to not be that guy. I learned that I was constant, that we're all constantly that guy. And that you don't have to be, that you can wash dishes while you wash dishes. And that if you do so, here's what I promise you, because I know from experience. If you learn to quiet, to say presence means I'm not going to be in the future. I'm not going to be in hallucinatory future scenarios. I'm not going to let my mind run off to hallucinatory past scenarios. I'm not going to hallucinate about the future. I'm not going to hallucinate about the past, because those can only be hallucinations, or call them imaginations. You cannot make the future real. You cannot make the past real. The only real is ever what you can find through your five senses. So presence practice means live in the real more often. You want to think about something? Think about what you're doing. Be what you're doing. You're washing dishes? Wash the dishes. If you're working on your book, work on your book. If you're talking to another person, talk to another person. If you're watching the birds in your yard, watch the birds in your yard. So let me give this, for me, the big wild finish. First of all, if that's all I ever knew and I figured out how to do that 6 years ago without any other further teachings, I would be right where I am today. And these are not light sentences to me. These are the greatest revelations of my life. Peace, a profound sense of constant peace, a profound sense of joy for no reason, and a loving feeling, that filled what I used to have, this black hole of, gee, I wish I could get more love. And now I have a fountain of love that just comes from inside me for no reason. Peace, love, and joy for no reason are what automatically and guaranteed come from being present. It doesn't require meditation. It requires noticing that your thoughts are running rampantly out of your control, and you can distance yourself from them. And then once you distance yourself from them, you can, I like to call them the roommate. You can notice your thoughts are not you. They are a crazy roommate that's always stirring up shit in your head and never stops talking. And you are not that roommate. And you can move that roommate to the garage. And the day you move, it doesn't happen in a day. The more you put that roommate in the garage, 100% peace, joy, love, for no reason other than you moved your roommate to the garage, and miracles will begin manifesting in your life. For some reason, the entire universe is more capable then of coming to support your happiness.
It's incredible. Yeah, I could sit and talk with you all day, and we've already gone over, man. I literally could sit here and do this. So before we leave this one subject, I think it's important. Is there any sort of when you talk about the practice, is there any little tidbits of how someone can do that in the simplest way? Because I think everyone gets bogged down with all of the things. For example, we talk about meditation. It's just hard. I mean, I used to get up every day and I made it a promise that I wouldn't do anything until I just put my headphones on, put the app on my iPhone, turned everything else off so it wouldn't be interrupted, and just did it. And I felt like that was my most productive. Let's say it was a year that I did it straight. I haven't done it in so long, and I feel like I got to get back to it. I can do it. Like I don't mind meditating, but there are people that will never do that. So what is a super,
I'm one of those
simple,
people that doesn't meditate.
Okay.
I was one of those people that will never meditate.
Okay.
And I'm really happy to say that both are fantastic choices, whichever you feel called to, clearly, and they both lead to the same way. But if in some crazy, really hypothetical, I can tell when I'm saying something stupid. I'm saying something stupid, but in some crazy, stupid, hypothetical situation, they said, Patrick, you have to choose one for the world, meditation or presence practice. I would say we got to go with presence practice. It's easier. Okay, so yes, I have two things that are really simple and super practical, and bless you for asking. Joe, the number one thing, and wildly enough, what I'm about to say is the prescription and the advice of seemingly every great teacher, on the planet that is spiritual, and it's to be conscious of one single breath. So at any point in time, you go, oh, I want to do it. I'm going to try this presence practice. You would simply take one breath and be aware of your breathing for one breath. And your awareness, you can shift around. You just say, look, my job is to be aware that I'm having this breath. So that for you, that might mean, oh, I'm going to focus on the feeling of the air coming into my body and exhaling from my body. Or you might say, I'm going to become aware of the feeling of my body expanding and contracting. Or your awareness might say, I'm going to be aware of the sound of my breath. Doesn't matter. One conscious breath, because it is impossible to be conscious of your breathing and think a thought at the same time. But conscious breath is it's a great presence practice, because it will be difficult for most people at the beginning of their journey to complete one conscious breath without becoming aware. I started thinking my mind got off the leash and started thinking something halfway into that breath. And so that's the great teacher. One, because that's okay. That's a presence practice. A presence practice isn't stopping all thoughts. It's becoming aware of the thoughts of the roommate. It's becoming you're winning when you go, the roommate came in and started talking shit while I was trying to take a breath. So that's called awake. That's a state of awakeness. As long as you're awake to your thoughts, peace, love, joy, and miracles will begin pouring into your life. Mark my words. But as you will practice that too, you can take a conscious breath without thinking on most given days. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. The second practice, right, is that built my life on this, is step number one. Notice when you're feeling anything that's bad. The only thing this doesn't apply to is physical pain. Okay, so I want just people to eliminate physical pain. It can be applied to physical pain, but let's just say that's an advanced course. Okay, but the step number one, the most important step, is to notice, oh, I'm feeling upset in any way. And there should only be one word. It would be helpful if people changed and said, there's only one word now. We're going to throw out all these different various words: hate, depression, loneliness, sadness, grief, worry, overwhelm, stress, anxiety. Who cares? Fear. They all deserve really one word: suffering. They're all a form of suffering. So notice the next time that you're suffering a negative emotion. Boom! Now there's a great opportunity for step number two. Okay. And usually when you notice this, what's fascinating is you'll have been feeling it for a long time. That's how long it takes for awareness to come in and say, wow, I'm feeling something bad here. But I did this for at least a year, and oh my God, it changed my life. So first I noticed I have a bad feeling. Step number 2 is built on the awareness we already learned. Every bad feeling began with a thought that was against something happening. Every bad feeling is caused by a thought that always follows the same structure. This shouldn't be happening to me. This shouldn't be happening. Okay. So when you have a bad feeling, you're like a person trying to defuse a bomb before it really blows up. And so you trace the wires, knowing at the other end of the wire, there will be a thought. You had a thought at the other end of those wires that was something about you thought it shouldn't be happening. Let me give you some examples. He or she shouldn't have spoken to me like that. I should have gotten that job. I shouldn't have gotten that. There should be more money in my bank account. There should be a different president. That guy shouldn't be president. That shouldn't have happened through my television screen. I shouldn't be in this condition. I shouldn't have that ailment. I shouldn't have this pressure. I shouldn't have been raised that way. I shouldn't. So all you're doing is tracing those wires to what did I think shouldn't be as it is. That was the source of your pain. Now, once you have that, the third step is to take that it shouldn't have, and see if you can find any part of yourself, and you always can, it's harder at first, that says, I can allow that it is that way. And your why, your justification, why can you allow that it is that way, can always be sanity, because it is that way. And as soon as you accomplish any ability to allow that what you were against, to just allow that it is, it's even if it's temporary allowance, it's not saying, I'm okay with that person being president forever. It's not an allowance of forever. It's, I'm okay. I can allow that person is president currently because they are. So you're just looking for this momentary allowance of what all spiritual teachers say of what is. To be against, and I love it when they point out, to be against what is insanity. Because I'm against that this can't exist. Really? Because it exists. Could you allow that it exists? I can allow that it exists. Why? Because it does exist. Right.
So simple. It's just
right. Now it's not a total acceptance of, hey, I'm allowing that these cans will exist forever. It's not saying that. Can you allow that it exists right now? At first you'll hear your ego go, no, I hate that can. But can you allow that it exists right now? Is anything can? Yeah. Why? Because it exists right now. And all the, it shouldn't exist. It shouldn't exist. It shouldn't exist. You could do that for 12 years, 24/7. This can will still exist. So if you can allow that it exists, you have accomplished a presence practice, because presence what will happen next will always happen. You will feel better, and you'll notice, wow, I'm returning to peace. And once you accomplish returning to peace, you'll notice, oh, I just feel in general more love. And then after a while, you'll notice, someday you'll take a measure of your life and you'll say, is my life joyful? And you say, my life's joyful all the time, everywhere. Why? Because you moved your roommate, your ego,
to the garage. Oh, it's awesome.
Now, there's a fourth final step to that. And I think of it as advanced. But so sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's easy, but it's super fun. The third step was, can you allow that something is what it is? And the fourth possibility is, can you embrace that it is what it is? Is there anything in you that could embrace that could say, not only can I allow the can is there, but I can embrace that the can is there. And you can see why that's a harder step, because something you were previously just totally against, could you embrace it? Now, that's a different sort of class. It's not complicated, but it takes more words. My journey towards learning to embrace things I was previously against, but I'll tell you, like, some of the greatest revelations of your life come when you learn to embrace everything. Everything.
It's really powerful, man. It's
not woo-woo, is it?
It's not woo-woo at all. It's just we complicate things so. It's amazing how much we complicate things.
But you know what's crazy is it's also super spiritual. It's what the spiritual masters on the planet from all these different religions are telling us is the doorway to heaven. And I know it to be true for myself. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you going through that, because I think people need that simplicity to start attacking that and working on that practice. And if it's too complicated, and if it's too foo-foo, and it's too spiritual, and it's too all that other stuff, say, no, it's not. This is all it is. It's, just alone, just from taking yoga, just to sit there and breathe is so difficult sometimes, just to concentrate on it. So I appreciate you going through that. Super helpful.
Yeah, cool.
All right, my friend, I've kept you way too long past what we had agreed upon, and I really appreciate your time. You are such an inspiration to me. You know that. I'm so glad our paths crossed. It was meant to be, I think, for me anyhow.
For me too, Joe. Yeah, so very, very, very much. It wasn't me talking today, right? It was a conversation emerging between us. So we are equals in what we did today. So thank you so much.
Hey, it's my pleasure. And what is the best way for the audience to get in contact with you?
My preferred way would be to go to Facebook and find me, Patrick Combs, at Facebook. And when they friend request me, I just really wish I wish it was a common habit for people to say, hey, I'm friend requesting you because I met you through Joe Costello. That would be meaningful to get friend requests like that. And then the second thing is, do go check out what we're doing at blisschampions.com after you've gone to Purpose Code and gotten that free report. And I have a website called patrickcombs.com, and that tells you more than you'll ever desire to know about me.
All right, Patrick. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your thoughts and inspiration. And thanks, I feel 1,000 times better just from this conversation. So I do. I appreciate it. I'm ready to conquer the world. So I really appreciate you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks so much. I appreciate you too.
I'm very honored that you are listening to my podcast. And if you really like what you are hearing, if you would please rate it, that would be great. And if you have the time to write a review, I would be very much grateful for that. Thank you so much, and I hope you join me again for future episodes.